Okay, polyatomic ions. This one, you're going to need a chart, polyatomic ion chart. You do not have to memorize these polyatomic ions. You'll always have a chart to look at. So polyatomic ions are ions made up of more than one element. So for example, carbonate is CO3 2-. So there's a covalent bond happening between that carbon and those 3 oxygen molecules, but there's not quite enough electrons yet to make that stable. So that's why it has a 2- charge, because it wants to accept 2 extra electrons. Sulfate is another example, which is SO4 2-. Here's a table of some common polyatomic ions and their charges. Again, you will get this chart. You don't need to memorize them. The only one I want to draw your attention to is ammonium, which is the only positive polyatomic ion that we're going to work with in Science 10. Okay, so ammonium is NH4+. All the other ones are negative charges, so they're going to bond with a metal. Okay, so how do we write the names with polyatomic ions? It's actually pretty easy. You just have to write the name of the polyatomic ion just as you see it on the paper. Do not change the ending to IDE. So for example, CaCO3, we're going to recognize, hey, there's a metal at the front. This is an ionic compound with a polyatomic ion. So I'm going to look up Ca on the periodic table, and I find it's calcium. And then I'm going to look at my polyatomic ion chart. It is carbonate. CO3 is carbonate. Let's try this one. What's Na? Look at your periodic table. Number 11, that's sodium. And what's OH? That is hydroxide. I found that right from my polyatomic ion chart. How about iron? Fe is iron, and sulfate is on my polyatomic ion chart. I actually made a mistake here. Can you see it? Iron is multivalent, so that should say, it says iron sulfate, it should say iron 2 sulfate. Yes, that's true. I just looked it up. There should be a 2 there. Sorry about that. Okay, here's another one. NH4, that's our friend ammonia. Remember, ammonium. Ammonium is our only positive ion. Then I'm going to look at NO3. NO3 is nitrate. Ammonium nitrate. Okay, give it a try. Pause the video and see what you can do. Okay, how did you do? Let's have a look. NH4NO2 is ammonium. Oh, sorry, that should say ammonium nitrite. CaSO4 is calcium sulfate. K2CrO4 is potassium chromate. And FeCO3 is iron 2 carbonate. That's the mistake I made before. That's iron 2 carbonate. Okay, so those are names. Formulas. It's just the same as before. Identify the ions and their charges. Determine how many of each ion you need to balance the positive and negative charges. And use the subscript to write the formula. But this is the tricky part. If a polyatomic ion is getting a subscript, you have to put brackets around it. Just like in math, you need to use brackets to show that everything within the brackets is getting that number applied to it. So for example, if you want 2 NO3- ions, you write it like this, with a bracket and then the subscript. Not like this. That's 32 oxygens and 1 nitrogen. That's not right. So what's the formula for potassium carbonate? So the potassium ion is K+, the carbonate ion is CO3 2-. Think about balancing out the charges, and you'll see we need 2 potassiums to balance the -2 from the carbonate. There's our second potassium. Now our charges balance. So our formula is K2CO3. What is the formula for ammonium sulfate? So here's my ammonium ion, NH4+. Here is my sulfate ion, SO4 2-. We need to balance out those charges, so we need to add an extra ammonium. Now our charges balance. And our formula is NH42SO4. So please note the bracket here. Now it's saying we have 2 N's and 8 H's. You need that bracket. It's really important. Okay, last one for you to try. Pause the video and try writing the formulas. Press play when you're done. Okay, how'd you do? Ammonium sulfide is NH42S. Silver sulfide is AgSO3. Nickel 2-phosphate is Ni3PO42. And calcium hydroxide is CaOH2. All right, go ahead and complete the assignment on Teams.